Something is happening in Jerusalem right now that hasn't happened since the Roman Empire destroyed the city. A road sealed underground for nearly 2,000 years just reopened to human footsteps. A pool tied to one of history's most famous healings is being excavated for the first time in modern history. And the rules at the world's most watched piece of land, a site considered holy by billions of people, just quietly shifted in a way that hasn't happened in nearly 6 decades. Well, this isn't a theory. This isn't speculation. These are confirmed, documented events unfolding right now in 2025 and 2026, and when you line them up together, the picture they form is unlike anything that has happened in the modern era. Here's what makes this even more remarkable. These 3 things, the pool, the road, and the Temple Mount, are not separate stories. They are connected, physically connected. They form a single corridor, a sacred path that once carried millions of pilgrims through the heart of ancient Jerusalem. And for the first time in nearly 2,000 years, that corridor is being reconnected, piece by piece, right in front of the world. Now, before we go any further, let's be precise about something important. When we say confirmed and documented, we mean that the core archaeological and political events described in this video have been reported by multiple credible outlets and institutions, including the Israel Antiquities Authority, peer-reviewed archaeological publications, and mainstream international news organizations. Where specific numbers or claims are disputed or uncertain, we will say so explicitly. This is a story with enough verified substance that it doesn't need embellishment, and we're not going to provide any. By the time this video is over, you are going to understand exactly what is being uncovered, exactly what has changed, and exactly why historians, archaeologists, and faith communities across the globe are paying close attention. But first, we need to go back, way back, because to understand what is being opened right now, you need to understand what was buried and why it stayed buried for so long. The story of this corridor is not just a story about dirt and stones. It is a story about how civilizations layer themselves on top of one another, how the sacred becomes buried under the ordinary, and how, occasionally, in rare moments of history, what was lost begins to surface again. Jerusalem is one of the most continuously inhabited cities on Earth. Estimates vary, but the city has been occupied for somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 years, depending on how you define continuous habitation and which archaeological layers you're counting. That kind of depth means that every time you walk through Jerusalem's old city, you are walking over the roof of another city, and beneath that, another and another. The corridor we're talking about in this video belongs to one of those buried worlds, a world from the 1st century of the Common Era. A world that was violently erased and then slowly, silently covered over by time. And it is coming back. 2,000 years ago, Jerusalem was one of the most visited cities on Earth. 3 times a year, at Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot, Jewish pilgrims from across the ancient world would make their way to this city. The scale of these pilgrimages is documented in multiple ancient sources, including the works of the 1st century Jewish historian Josephus. His numbers, at times claiming over 1 million visitors during Passover, are widely considered by modern historians to be significant exaggerations, likely for rhetorical effect. The actual numbers were almost certainly far lower, but even conservative scholarly estimates suggest tens of thousands of pilgrims arriving in Jerusalem during each of the 3 major festivals. Some traveled for days or weeks on foot. Some came from as far as Babylon, Egypt, and Rome. When they arrived, and every single one of them followed the same general path into the city's sacred heart. They would descend into the lower part of the city, to a large, open pool fed by an ancient tunnel carved through solid rock. A pool called Siloam. The name itself is the Greek rendering of the Hebrew word Shiloah, which means sent, a reference to the directed flow of water that feeds it. In the context of pilgrimage, that word took on layers of meaning that ancient Jewish commentators explored at length. There, pilgrims would immerse. This was a ritual act, a mikveh, a purification bath, required before ascending to the temple. It wasn't optional. It wasn't casual. It was the threshold between the ordinary world and the sacred one. You could not enter the temple precincts in a state of ritual impurity. The pool was where that transition happened. Then they would rise from the water, step onto a wide stone-paved road, and begin the walk upward. That road was called the Pilgrimage Road, or in some scholarly literature, the Stepped Street. It ran approximately 600 meters from the pool up through the city of David and into the area just south of the Temple Mount. The stones were large, some of them weighing several tons, carefully cut and laid over a sophisticated drainage system that channeled rainwater and wastewater through channels running beneath the pavement. This infrastructure did not happen by accident. It was built deliberately, expensively, and on a massive scale. The Pilgrimage Road was a statement as much as it was a thoroughfare. It said, "This city takes its sacred geography seriously. This city knows exactly who is coming and exactly where they are going." The road was lined with commercial activity. First-century Jerusalem's economy was, in significant ways, organized around the pilgrimage industry. Pilgrims needed food. They needed lodging. They needed the ritually correct animals for temple sacrifice. The market stalls, the money changers, the merchants, all of this activity clustered along and around the routes that pilgrims traveled. The Pilgrimage Road was not just a sacred path. It was, in the most literal sense, the main street of the city's economic and religious life. Then, in 70 AD, that world ended. Now the Roman army under General Titus, son of Emperor Vespasian, besieged Jerusalem following several years of Jewish revolt against Roman rule. The siege was brutal. Ancient sources, including Josephus, describe catastrophic famine, internal factional violence within the city, and mass casualties. The temple was destroyed, an event whose exact circumstances have been debated by historians for centuries, with ancient accounts differing on whether Titus intended its destruction or whether it was an accident of war that escalated out of control. What is not disputed is the outcome. The temple burned. The structure that Herod the Great had spent decades transforming into one of the most magnificent buildings in the ancient world was reduced to ruins. The city was not simply damaged, it was, in significant areas, obliterated. The lower city, the area of the Pilgrimage Road, and the Pool of Siloam bore the full weight of the Roman assault. Josephus describes the systematic destruction of neighborhoods, the burning of houses, the killing and enslavement of the population. The road, the pool, and the entire sacred infrastructure of Second Temple Jerusalem did not simply fall into disuse. They were destroyed, abandoned, and then buried, layer by layer, under the debris of the city's death and the slow accumulation of every subsequent century of habitation. For nearly 2,000 years, that world stayed underground until archaeologists began finding it again, and what they found challenged assumptions that had stood for generations. To truly understand why the Pool of Siloam is unlike any other archaeological site being excavated on Earth right now, you have to hear the story that made it famous to billions of people. It is recorded in the Gospel of John. Chapter 9. Jesus and his disciples are walking through Jerusalem when they encounter a man who had been blind from birth. The disciples ask whose sin caused the blindness, his own or his parents'. It was a standard theological question of the era, rooted in assumptions about the relationship between suffering and sin that were common in first-century Jewish thought. Jesus gives an unexpected answer. "Neither," he says. Then he stops. He crouches down. He makes a paste from the ground, mixing soil with his own saliva, and places it on the man's eyes. Then he gives him one instruction: go, wash in the pool of Siloam. The text in John adds a parenthetical note, a detail that biblical scholars have found significant. It says, which means sent. The gospel writer seems to be drawing a deliberate connection between the name of the pool and the theological theme of the chapter. The idea of being sent, of mission, of divine purpose expressed through physical action. The man goes to the pool, he washes, he comes back seeing. Now here is what most people miss about this account, and what the archaeology makes suddenly, strikingly real. The Pool of Siloam was not a small, quiet, private place. It was one of the central gathering points of the entire city during pilgrimage season. During Passover alone, Based on conservative modern estimates of festival attendance, thousands of people would have been moving through this area daily. It was public in the most absolute sense. There was nothing hidden, nothing tucked away about what happened at that pool, which means the healing described in John 9, if one accepts it as a historical event, did not happen in the margins. It happened at the center. It happened at the place where the city's sacred life literally began, at the first step of the pilgrimage, at the threshold between the ordinary and the holy. The text says the man came back seeing, and his neighbors didn't recognize him. This is not a small detail. It implies he had been a regular presence in that part of the city, probably someone who begged near the pool, in a location where he would encounter the maximum number of people. His transformation was so complete that those who had known him couldn't reconcile what they were seeing. The Pharisees summoned him for questioning, then summoned his parents. The interrogation that follows takes up most of the chapter and reveals the social stakes of the healing, the pressure on his parents, the threat of being expelled from the synagogue, the man's own gradually clarifying understanding of who Jesus was. It is one of the longest healing narratives in the Gospels, when it is given more space and more dialogue than almost any other single event in John's account. And it is anchored to a specific, real place, a pool that archaeologists have now physically uncovered. The steps the man walked down to reach the water, scholars and archaeologists believe those stone steps are the same ones now being carefully exposed and cleaned. The water at the bottom of those steps is fed by the same source, Hezekiah's tunnel, that it was fed by in the 1st century. We should be clear, no inscription has been found at the pool that says, "Here a blind man was healed." Archaeology does not confirm miracles. What archaeology confirms is the reality of the place, its size, its centrality, its role in the life of the city, and its existence exactly where the gospel text places it. That confirmation matters, because for centuries, scholars debated whether various gospel locations were real places or theological constructs. The Pool of Siloam was one of those debated locations. The excavations have settled that question. The place is real, the steps are real, the water is real. What you do with that is your own. At the bottom of the pilgrimage road sits the Pool of Siloam, and what is happening at this site right now is one of the most significant ongoing excavations in the entire history of biblical archaeology. Let's start with the water source, because it helps explain why this pool was here at all. Hezekiah's tunnel is a feat of ancient engineering that still astonishes modern engineers. Carved through solid limestone approximately 700 BC, the dating is based on a combination of stratigraphic evidence, an inscription found inside the tunnel in the 19th century, and correlation with written biblical and Assyrian sources. The tunnel runs approximately 533 meters through the bedrock beneath the city of David. It was cut from both ends simultaneously, a navigational achievement whose precision is not fully explained even today. The two teams of workers who carved from opposite directions managed to meet in the middle, as recorded in the Siloam inscription, which describes the moment the workers heard each other's pickaxes through the rock. The tunnel directed water from the Gihon Spring, Jerusalem's primary natural water source, located just outside the city's eastern wall, to the Pool of Siloam inside the city. The purpose was strategic. During an anticipated siege by the Assyrian king Sennacherib, Jerusalem needed to be able to deny water to an attacking army while securing its own supply. The tunnel achieved exactly that. The Gihon Spring still flows today. Hezekiah's tunnel still carries that water, and the Pool of Siloam still receives it. This is not a dry archaeological site. The water that pilgrims immersed in during the Second Temple period is still there. Now, the excavations themselves. The modern story of the Pool of Siloam's rediscovery begins in 2004, when workers from the Jerusalem municipality were repairing a sewage pipe in the area of Siloam, a neighborhood in East Jerusalem, built over the ancient city of David. Their equipment struck something unexpected. Archaeologists Ronnie Reich and Eli Shukron were called in. What they found were large stone steps, clearly ancient, clearly significant. Subsequent excavation over the following years revealed a substantial portion of the pool. The steps that were uncovered indicated a structure much larger than previously assumed. Initial estimates suggested the pool was approximately 60 to 70 meters wide, roughly 200 feet, with broad stone steps descending on at least two sides and possibly more. We should be careful here about specific measurements cited in popular sources. Different reports cite slightly different dimensions, and the full extent of the pool has not yet been established because excavation is still ongoing. What archaeologists have confirmed is that this was a large public immersion facility, a mikveh at civic scale, with multiple broad steps designed to allow large numbers of people to enter and exit simultaneously. The coins, pottery, and other artifacts recovered from the site have been dated by numismatic and ceramic analysis to the late Second Temple period, the 1st century BC through the 1st century AD. This is consistent with the pool's described role in the pilgrimage road system during the Herodian period. In 2023, a major breakthrough happened. The Israel Antiquities Authority, the City of David Foundation, and the Jerusalem Development Authority announced an accelerated excavation project at the pool site. Funding had been secured. The specific amounts have been reported variously in different sources, so we won't cite a single figure, and a formal timeline was established for full excavation and eventual public opening. By late 2024 and into 2025, archaeologists reported reaching bedrock in portions of the excavation area. This is a significant milestone. It means the complete stratigraphic picture of that section of the site is now available, and no further digging in that zone will produce new layers. What they found along the way included the full extent of at least one staircase system, additional drainage channels, and evidence of the pool's construction methodology. The craftsmanship is consistent with other Herodian period construction found across Jerusalem and the wider region. Large, carefully cut limestone blocks, precise fitting without mortar in many sections, designed to last. The projected timeline for full public access, with visitors able to descend the original steps and reach the water level, has been reported by multiple outlets as approximately 2027 to 2028. We present this as a target, not a guarantee. Archaeological excavations encounter unexpected complications. Political situations change, but the direction of travel is clear, and the commitment from the relevant authorities appears substantial. There is something else worth noting about what the excavation has done beyond the physical uncovering of stone and water. It has changed the academic conversation about the size, sophistication, and urban planning of 1st century Jerusalem. Before these excavations, some historians had described the Jerusalem of Jesus' time as a relatively modest provincial city, significant religiously, but not architecturally or economically remarkable by the standards of the Roman Empire. What the pilgrimage road and pool of Siloam excavations have revealed is a city of genuinely impressive civic infrastructure. The scale of the road, the engineering of the pool, the drainage systems, the quality of the stonework. This was not a modest city pretending to be important. This was a city that had invested enormously in its sacred infrastructure, and that investment is visible in the stones now coming back into the light. On January 29, 2026, something happened that no living person on earth had ever witnessed. For the first time since the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, nearly 2,000 years, visitors walked the full accessible length of the pilgrimage road. Not a replica, not a reconstruction, the actual road, the original stone pavement, laid during the Herodian period of the late 1st century BC and early 1st century AD, now fully accessible for the first time in modern history. Now, let's be precise about what fully accessible means in this context, because precision matters here. The pilgrimage road runs beneath a densely inhabited modern neighborhood. The excavation of this road was not like excavating an open field or a desert site. Archaeologists and engineers had to work underneath active streets, beneath the foundations of existing buildings, in some sections excavating tunnel-style rather than open sky. The methodology was necessarily incremental and complex. These sections of the road had been accessible to visitors for some years before the January 2026 opening. Underground tunnel tours through the City of David had given limited groups access to portions of the excavated road. But what the January 2026 opening represented was the formal public accessibility of the full excavated stretch, a complete walkable path from the lower end of the excavation near the Pool of Siloam up toward the area adjacent to the Temple Mount's southern retaining wall. And the road itself is remarkable in its preservation. The paving stones are large, in some cases measuring over 1 meter in width. They are not smoothly finished. They have a deliberately rough surface texture, which scholars believe was intentional for traction, particularly in wet weather or when the road was crowded with sandaled pilgrims. Those grooves and textures have survived remarkably well. Beneath the road, the drainage system is intact. Chocks and channels carved into the bedrock run under the pavement, designed to carry away water during the heavy winter rains that Jerusalem receives. During the excavation, archaeologists discovered that some of those drainage channels were used by Jewish survivors during the Roman siege of 70 AD as hiding places or escape routes. Coins, arrowheads, and personal belongings were found inside the channels, left behind by people who never came back to retrieve them. That detail is not incidental. It means the road doesn't just preserve the architecture of the pilgrimage era, it preserves the archaeology of the destruction. The moment the city fell is frozen into the stones. Objects dropped in flight, in fear, in the chaos of a city being torn apart, and never moved again until archaeologists found them 1,950 years later. The coins found along the road and in the drainage channels have been particularly valuable for dating. While numismatic analysis places the latest coins from the siege period at approximately 69 to 70 AD, consistent with the historical record of the siege's final phase. No coins from after that period were found in the primary road layer, which supports the interpretation that the road was sealed by destruction debris very quickly after the fall of the city and was not meaningfully used again in antiquity. Some popular accounts of the pilgrimage road have described it as running directly to the Temple Mount gates. We want to be careful here. The road's upper terminus is near the area south of the Temple Mount, specifically the area of the Hulda Gates, the main southern entrance to the temple complex during the Second Temple period. Whether visitors walking the road today can physically walk from the road's upper end to the Temple Mount is a matter of current access arrangements and ongoing development. The physical, historical connection is not in dispute. The exact visitor experience at the upper end is subject to ongoing planning and security considerations. What is not in dispute is this: for the first time in living memory, a person can stand on the same stones that first-century pilgrims walked, can place their feet in the grooves worn by sandals 2,000 years ago, can walk upward through the city of David on a road that is simultaneously a piece of archaeology and a piece of living religious geography. The scholarly response to the road's opening has been significant. Archaeologists who have worked on the site have described it as one of the most important urban archaeology achievements in the modern history of the field. To excavate a 600-meter first-century road beneath a living city without destroying the city above it is a technical achievement as much as an archaeological one, and it is now open. The pilgrimage road leads to the Temple Mount, and what is happening at the Temple Mount right now is more complicated, more contested, and, depending on your perspective, potentially more significant than either of the archaeological developments we have just described. Let's be very clear from the outset. The Temple Mount is one of the most politically and religiously sensitive sites on Earth. What we are about to describe involves real events, documented by credible news organizations and verified by multiple sources. But the interpretation of those events varies enormously depending on who you ask. We are going to present what happened. We are going to present the context. We are not going to tell you how to feel about it. For nearly 57 years, since Israel gained control of Jerusalem's Old City following the Six-Day War of June 1967, a specific arrangement governed the Temple Mount. The arrangement is known as the status quo, though that term carries significant political baggage and means different things to different parties. In broad terms, Israel maintained physical security control of the site. The Islamic Waqf, an Islamic religious trust administered through a Jordanian framework, established in the 1920s during the British Mandate period, retained administrative and religious control of the site itself. The practical effect of this arrangement was that Muslims could pray freely on the Temple Mount. Non-Muslims, including Jews and Christians, could visit during designated hours, but were formally prohibited from conducting religious worship. This prohibition was enforced inconsistently over the decades, but it was the formal policy. Jewish visitors who were observed praying, even silently, even briefly, could be and frequently were removed by Israeli police at the request of Waqf officials. The specific actions that triggered removal varied over time and by the discretion of on-duty officers, but the broad prohibition on non-Muslim prayer was consistently maintained as official policy. That began to change, not all at once, but incrementally and measurably in 2024 and 2025. The reported statistic of over 68,000 Jewish visitors ascending the Temple Mount in the Hebrew year ending in September 2025, a 22% increase over the prior year, comes from figures reported by organizations that track and promote Jewish access to the Temple Mount. We note this source context because these organizations have an advocacy interest in the numbers they report, and independent verification of the exact figures is difficult. And what is not in doubt is the general trend. Jewish visits to the Temple Mount have increased significantly over the past several years. This trend has been reported by mainstream Israeli and international news organizations across the political spectrum. The event of August 3, 2025, Tisha B'Av, is more specifically documented. Tisha B'Av is the most solemn day in the Jewish calendar related to national mourning. It commemorates the destruction of both the first and second temples, as well as other historical catastrophes. The dates of both temple destructions are traditionally fixed on the 9th of Av in the Hebrew calendar. Jewish tradition holds that both temples were destroyed on the same calendar date, centuries apart, a coincidence so striking that it became the center of one of Judaism's most profound observances. For Tisha B'Av, worshippers to ascend the Temple Mount, to stand at the site of the temple's destruction on the day that destruction is mourned, has always carried enormous symbolic weight. It has also been one of the flashpoints of tension around Temple Mount access, precisely because of that symbolic weight. Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visiting the Temple Mount on Tisha B'Av 2025 and being reported to have led prayers near the Dome of the Rock is documented in Israeli and international news coverage. Ben-Gvir has been publicly and explicitly in favor of expanded Jewish prayer rites on the Temple Mount, and his actions on that day were consistent with his stated policy positions. The event drew significant commentary from Palestinian officials, Jordanian officials, and international diplomatic observers. We note that led prayers is described in various ways in different accounts, and the exact nature of what occurred has been disputed. What is established is that a senior Israeli cabinet minister was present and engaged in some form of religious observance at the site. The January 21, 2026 development, Israeli police allowing Jewish worshippers to ascend with printed prayer sheets, was reported by multiple Israeli news outlets. Prayer sheets, or sidders, had previously been among the items confiscated at the entrance to the Temple Mount from Jewish visitors. Their allowance represented a shift in enforcement practice, if not necessarily a formal change in written policy. The eyewitness account described in the original script a man who has visited regularly since 1970, noting that people can now pray openly for several minutes, comes from personal testimony reported in journalistic coverage. We present it as one person's account, not as a systematic, documented change. The situation at the Temple Mount remains genuinely fluid. Jordan has protested the changes loudly through diplomatic channels. Palestinian officials have described the developments as provocations. Some Israeli legal scholars have noted that the formal legal status of prayer rites at the Temple Mount has not been changed by legislation. The shifts that have occurred are in enforcement practice and in the political signaling of senior officials. What that means for the medium and long term is not something we can predict with confidence. We can note that the direction of travel, measured by visitor numbers, by high-profile incidents, and and by changes in enforcement, has been consistently toward expanded Jewish access and religious expression at the site. Whether that trend continues, reverses, or accelerates is genuinely uncertain. To understand why the Temple Mount matters so deeply to so many people, and why the shifts described in the previous section carry the weight they do, you have to understand what this ground actually represents in the religious traditions of billions of human beings. This is not simply a very old religious site. For Jewish tradition, the Temple Mount is the Makom HaMikdash, the place of the sanctuary. So Jewish tradition identifies the rock at the center of what is now the Dome of the Rock as the Even HaShetia, the foundation stone, understood to be the physical center of creation, the point from which the world was spiritually and materially established. This is where, according to the book of Genesis, Abraham brought his son Isaac to offer as a sacrifice before being stopped by the angel of God. The text identifies the location as Mount Moriah, a name that appears in only 2 places in the entire Hebrew Bible, in Genesis and in the book of Chronicles, where the same location is explicitly identified as the site of Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple, the first temple, was built on this ground approximately in the 10th century BC, though the exact dating is debated by archaeologists and historians. The structure is described in extraordinary detail in the books of Kings and Chronicles. Its inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, housed the Ark of the Covenant, the golden container holding the tablets of the law given at Sinai. The presence of God was described as dwelling above the ark, between the cherubim. This temple stood, according to the biblical chronology, for approximately 400 years before it was destroyed by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. The destruction is historically corroborated by Babylonian records, as well as by the archaeological evidence in Jerusalem from this period. The Second Temple was built beginning around 520 BC by the returning Jewish exiles under Zerubbabel, with the explicit encouragement of the Persian king Cyrus. Another event with external historical corroboration. This temple was more modest than the first, but was gradually expanded. Under King Herod the Great, who ruled Judea as a client king under Roman authority beginning in 37 BC, the Temple Mount complex was massively expanded in scale. Herod essentially doubled or more the size of the Temple Mount platform, building enormous retaining walls. The western wall is part of this Herodian construction, and constructing a new temple building that ancient sources describe as dazzling. Herod's temple complex was, by the accounts of those who saw it, was one of the most impressive structures in the Roman world. The Roman-era Jewish writer Josephus wrote that the temple was covered in such quantities of gold that it was blinding to look at in direct sunlight. While Josephus is known for rhetorical exaggeration, the basic picture of a magnificent, richly appointed structure is corroborated by the physical remains of the Herodian construction that are still visible today, including the massive stones of the western wall, some of which weigh over 500 tons. This is the temple that Jesus of Nazareth visited. The Gospels record multiple incidents at the temple complex: his presentation as an infant, his visit as a 12-year-old, and multiple episodes during his adult ministry, including the dramatic overturning of the money changers' tables. The teaching discourse in Matthew 24 and Mark 13, in which Jesus predicts the temple's destruction, was delivered from the Temple Mount itself, according to the text. The destruction of this temple in 70 AD was not simply the end of a building. For Jewish religious life, it was a civilizational rupture. The entire system of temple worship, the sacrifices, the priestly roles, the pilgrimage festivals as physically enacted, ended in a single catastrophe. The rabbinical Judaism that emerged in the centuries following is, in many ways, a religious system constructed to function in the permanent absence of the temple. Prayer replaced sacrifice. The synagogue replaced the temple court. The rabbi replaced the priest. But the longing for the temple and the belief in a future restoration never disappeared from Jewish religious consciousness. It is embedded in the daily liturgy. It is embedded in the architecture of Jewish prayer. The requirement to face Jerusalem, within Jerusalem to face the Temple Mount, and at the Temple Mount to face the Holy of Holies. 3 times a day, For 2,000 years, hundreds of millions of Jews have oriented their bodies toward this piece of ground. For Christians, the significance of the Temple Mount is layered differently, but no less profound. The events of the Passion narrative, the week leading to Jesus' crucifixion, are set almost entirely in and around Jerusalem, with the temple complex as the central backdrop. The tearing of the temple curtain at the moment of the crucifixion, described in all three synoptic Gospels, was interpreted by early Christians as a theological statement about access to the divine presence being opened to all people. The temple was, in Christian interpretation, simultaneously the highest expression of the Old Covenant and the site of its transformation. For Muslims, the Temple Mount, known as Al-Haram al-Sharif, the noble sanctuary, is the third holiest site in Islam. After Mecca and Medina, the Dome of the Rock, completed in 691 AD, was built over the rock that Jewish tradition identifies as the foundation stone. According to Islamic tradition, this is the site from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during the night journey described in the Quran. The Al-Aqsa Mosque, also on the Temple Mount, is the destination of that journey referenced in the Quranic text. For the world's approximately 1.8 billion Muslims, this ground is not peripheral. It is sacred at the highest level. This is why changes at the Temple Mount reverberate so far beyond Jerusalem. This is why a shift in enforcement practice around prayer rites generates diplomatic protests from Amman and statements from the United Nations. This is why the archaeology underneath this ground and the corridor leading to it is not just academically interesting. It is, depending on your perspective, either a recovery of sacred history or a flashpoint for religious and political conflict. In the real world, it is usually both at the same time. So let's stop. Let's look at what we actually have here, clearly, carefully, without overstatement. In the span of just a few years, three separate developments are happening simultaneously in the same city, connected to the same sacred corridor, all moving in the same general direction. The Pool of Siloam, buried since the Roman period, is being actively excavated. Significant portions of the original structure are now visible. Archaeologists have reached bedrock in portions of the site. The pool's full public opening is targeted for approximately 2027 to 2028, though timelines in archaeology are always subject to change. The Pilgrimage Road, sealed underground for nearly 2,000 years, formally opened to public visitors on January 29, 2026. Not a portion of it, not a tunnel tour of a segment of it, the full accessible excavated stretch, walkable for the first time in the modern era. And the Temple Mount, where non-Muslim religious expression had been formally prohibited for nearly 6 decades, has seen documented, measurable, and widely reported changes in access and practice in 2025 and 2026. Those changes are real. Their long-term durability is genuinely uncertain. Their political and religious implications are actively contested. These three sites form a single physical corridor. When the Pool of Siloam is fully opened and publicly accessible, if and when the current excavation and development timeline holds, a visitor will be able to do something that has not been meaningfully possible since the 1st century. They will be able to begin at the water, immerse or simply stand at the edge of a pool fed by a tunnel carved 700 years before the Common Era. Then step onto the ancient stone road and walk upward on the same pavement that pilgrims walked, on stones laid by workers employed by Herod the Great. Walk upward through the city of David. Walk upward toward the gate that once opened into the temple complex. The corridor, the full corridor, restored, walkable, real. Now, what does this mean? That is where we have to be honest about the limits of what we know and what we can responsibly say. For some people, particularly in certain Jewish religious communities and some Christian evangelical communities, the reopening of this corridor is understood in explicitly prophetic terms. The Temple Mount is the center of a theology of restoration and redemption. The physical recovery of this sacred geography, happening in their lifetimes, is understood as confirmation of ancient promises. We present this perspective not to endorse it or dismiss it, but because it is genuinely held by a significant number of people, and because it directly shapes some of the political and financial support behind the excavations. For archaeologists and historians operating within secular academic frameworks, the significance of these developments is straightforwardly about knowledge. We are learning things about first-century Jerusalem that we could not have learned any other way. The road, the pool, the artifacts, to the drainage systems. These are primary sources for understanding a world that was largely lost. The significance is real and profound on those terms entirely, without any theological dimension. For Muslim communities, particularly Palestinians, these developments are not a recovery. They are, from their perspective, a transformation of a site administered under Islamic authority since the 7th century, driven by a political agenda that threatens the status quo that has governed the site for decades. The increased Jewish presence on the Temple Mount, the relaxation of prayer restrictions, the Israeli government figures explicitly calling for expanded Jewish rights at the site. From this perspective, these are not neutral archaeological developments. They are political moves with profound religious stakes. We cannot resolve this conflict. We can only describe it accurately. What we can say with confidence is this: the physical world of ancient Jerusalem is being recovered at a pace and at a scale that is genuinely unprecedented in the modern era. The stones are real, the water is real, the road is real, the history embedded in that corridor, the millions of pilgrims, the first-century healings, the apocalyptic destruction, the long centuries of burial is real, and the excavations are not finished. There are sections of the Pool of Siloam that remain underground. There are portions of the pilgrimage road system and its surroundings that have not been fully excavated. There are questions about the full extent of the pool, about the precise nature of its construction, about what, if anything, remains of the structures at its margins that the current excavation has not yet answered. What has already been found beneath the streets of Jerusalem has rewritten portions of what historians thought they knew about this city. The scale of the Herodian construction, the sophistication of the urban planning, the density and intensity of the city's sacred infrastructure. All of these have been revised upward by what the archaeology has revealed. What gets uncovered in the next 2 to 3 years, as the excavation reaches its final layers, could revise our understanding further. It could produce inscriptions, it could produce structures, it could produce objects that clarify questions that written history has left open for a very long time. Or it could produce nothing dramatically new, just more confirmation of what the existing evidence already shows. That happens in archaeology too, and it would not diminish the significance of what has already been found. There is one more thing worth saying. The corridor we have been describing, from the Pool of Siloam and up the pilgrimage road to the gates of the Temple Mount, was not just a route. It was a technology for transformation. It was designed to take ordinary human beings in their ordinary state and, through water and walking and ascending, move them into the presence of the holy. Whether or not you hold any of the religious beliefs that made that corridor sacred, there is something remarkable about the fact that it is coming back. Not as a relic, not in a museum, in the ground, in the actual city. Walkable, touchable, real. The road is open. The pool is being uncovered. The ground beneath Jerusalem is still giving up its secrets, and the world is watching.